Hey everyone, my name is Neil and welcome to another Real Terrain Hobbies video. And in this video, we're gonna make an amazing diorama. I'm gonna start out by making a template for a house. As you can see here, this is gonna be a medieval style house, something along the lines that you might see in Hogsmeade from Harry Potter, but at the same time have it unique and my own. So I made up a house in Blender. I 3D modeled that using references from, say, Hogwarts Legacy, The Witcher, various video games that I like, and I kind of combined something to make my own. And once I had the design finalized to where I was very happy with it, I went and converted the 3D model into a two-dimensional template that I'm using here. And once you got your 2D template, you print that out into a nice little stack of paper, cut each of the shapes out, and then they have corresponding numbers on each of the edges that you either butt those up against each other and glue them, or you can fold them. Eventually, you end up with your 3D model that was on the computer screen right there on your desk. And it's pretty awesome. Now, if you like this project, I am going to put the template up for sale on my website where you can download it, print it out, and make your own. That is just going to be in the link in the description below. Now, you also may or may not know that I put together an entire builder's kit for this exact hobby. It comes with all sorts of building materials, a massive amount of high quality tools, a laser cut blacksmith template that you can build and assemble yourself, but I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. All right, our cardboard template. I love my little chimney, so we got to put some stone on here. Typically or previously I would use cork. That's what I used right here, cork. This time I want to try something a little different. Milk cartons. So I'm going to try out some milk cartons. They've got this texture here. It's very nice, kind of stone rocky texture, kind of already done up for you. So I'm going to cut some of these up. We've already got a very unique shape to the building. Now let's see if we can add some more unique elements in here and really make this thing pop. Milk cartons. Okay, so for this project, I want to use a lot of windows, and I mean a lot. I really love the look of the buildings from like The Witcher or Harry Potter, Hogsmeade. There's something about the glass combined with the medieval fantasy building that's really nice. I'm using UV resin with a UV light, so careful, there are fumes. You might want to use a respirator. So I started out with some of the basic rectangular windows. I cut out the shapes into the side of the cardboard and glued those in place, and then continued with the stone. I sealed all the stone with Mod Podge as it would make it easier to paint later on, but now we get onto the really nice fancy windows. Now these windows were sent to me by PropFox. I don't know if they are still available or not. If they are, I'll leave a link in the description below, but they are laser cut and they're absolutely gorgeous. Very difficult to make something like this by hand, so this is definitely the way to go if you want a lot of detail. And there you go, you can just see the way the light is refracting through. When we put some flickering LEDs in behind there, it's going to look absolutely stunning. So we're moving on to the balsa, and this little saw that I have here is actually included in the builder's kit that I was talking about, along with a lot of balsa as well. If you don't know, it's an incredibly soft wood that is really easy to work with, especially with just a little knife. You can carve into it very easily. You can saw it very easily with a hobby saw, as you can see here. And it's just a very enjoyable medium to work with. There's a reason why so many other modelers and hobbyists use it. You can get very nice realistic looks out of it, and especially for medieval kind of half-timbered architecture like this, there's just something about using real wood that I just absolutely love. Now, if you're wondering how I come up with a design for all of this timber, again, it's reference images. Video games are a great source, but also online. Medieval Europe has a ton of medieval half-timber structures and architecture, so you don't have to be some kind of architectural genius. Just look up reference images and you can combine different elements to get what you're after. Moving on to the back side of the building, I wasn't quite sure at this point yet what type of building I wanted this to be. I was thinking possibly bookstore, possibly potion shop, possibly some kind of wizard's house. So I wanted actually in the backside for this to have kind of more of a wizardry type of feel and look to it. So I was going to do something a little different with the overall design. We kind of have some sun rays shooting out from the wood. I didn't want to go too crazy with it, but I wanted to try something a little different. Shingles, the bane of every crafter's and modeler's existence. Now, I actually did a calculation here to figure out exactly, or close, ballpark, what or the number of shingles that I actually used on this thing. So I sectioned it off into little rectangles and then times length by the width, number of shingles, added up the areas of all those different rectangles together. And I can safely say I'm close to 4,000 shingles on this project. For sure over 3,500. It was a lot of shingles. It was a lot of shingles. So the goal of this project isn't just to create a really cool and unique building, but I also want to make a really fascinating and dynamic diorama for this thing too. And to do that, to make this interesting, I want to create something that tells a story. For that, we're going to need some characters involved. In comes Hero Forge. Now, I've used Hero Forge before to create my own characters, and they've recently come out with a massive update on customization, and it's a feature called Kitbashing, and that's what you're seeing on the bottom left of your screen there, which allows you to do some really crazy things with the characters and really customize them to your liking. But specifically for this project, it's going to allow us to create some characters that are actually interacting and, most importantly, reacting to one another, which I think is going to be pretty awesome. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. So yes, this video is in fact sponsored by Hero Forge, so let me first introduce you to what they are all about. So they have really easy to use design tools that let you build your perfect miniature online using a fully 3D in-depth character creator right in your browser. From there, your custom designs are available in a range of materials. Choose from paintable plastics and rugged metal, or you can select their colored plastic option for full colored mini that is tabletop ready right out of the box. Or if you're like me and you own a 3D printer, they have the STL files available of your custom mini that can be purchased and downloaded directly to your computer, ready for printing. Okay, so I'm going to use the Kitbashing tools and design the minis that I want for this in just a minute. But first, we got to update on this base. So you're wondering, I'm assuming, what the straws were put in there for. Those are actually going to be functioning as conduit for the electrical. So an easy way for the wires to get pulled through and get to the center of the base there. You'll see that the 90-degree elbow doesn't actually work out too well. And the other thing too is I tore this thing down because I thought it was too high, too tall. So I brought it down a bit just to make it a little more, I don't know, short. Because yeah, that was going to be pretty tall otherwise. So I'm just using foam core here to build up this wall, cap it off at the top there. That'll be cladding with the egg cartons, not the milk cartons, but the egg cartons. And we're really going to see this base start coming together. Alright, so we've got all our egg carton cobblestone laid down on our street and on our stairs there. Now I'm just using some homemade Sculptamold to fill in the gaps. Now it's time we start talking about the characters in this setting. I've decided the building is going to be a bookstore just on the fringes of town, close to the deep, dark, scary forest. Now, this being a town, there's going to be little kids running around, little hooligans, and we're going to have two in particular that have a specific idea in store for our heroes. Speaking of our heroes, two adventurers have decided to leave their adventuring party and head over to the bookstore and are now just exiting. And the fresh rain on the ground, this proved to be just too much for our young hooligans to pass up an excellent opportunity to soak the very nicely dressed and well-to-do young lady, much to the joy of her male companion, who just couldn't help but burst out into absolute laughter. Now I know what you're thinking, however, fear not, justice will be served, and our story doesn't end here. Now what you've witnessed there is me using Hero Forge's new Kitbashing tools in order to create the minis and to pose them in the exact way that I wanted, using their posing tools that typically are only used in 3D modeling, 3D animation software. This is built right into the browser, so very powerful tools, and it really adds a whole other dimension of freedom when it comes to customizing your minis. Alright, so we're going to be finishing up the rocks on the side of the diorama, and I just use a gray base coat along with some washes for some weathering. Added on top of that was the tile grout, the brown that I used for the dirt, and then it's just a matter of adding some flocking and some static grass, and it's as quick and easy as that. Alright, now that the tile grout in between our stone has dried, it's time to just add some washes, and I blend those in using a water spray bottle to start. And I'm just adding it where I feel there'd be a lot of dirt and grime, add some coloration or variance in the color on the stairs and the very stone. And I'm going to be using this Vallejo or Vallejo, however you want to pronounce it. This is a grime or a green slime, I think it was called. And this again just adds more weathering and a bit of a moss effect. Now I'm going to be using some 3D printed elements as well that are from a Kickstarter that I had done previously. You can still get these items down in the link below if you're interested. But yeah, there's going to be a bunch of pumpkins, a wagon, some benches, fences, wheelbarrows, the perfect decorative elements to really dress up our scene. Now we're going to be moving on to some tufts and some grass tufts, as well as some foliage for our pumpkins. I didn't have any actual pumpkin leaves or vines, but I used the next best thing with some clump foliage. We're also going to add a whole bunch of tufts. I got tufts from Tajimi 1, which are what you see here. We've got tufts from Army Painter, which are what come in the Real Terrain Hobbies Builders Kit, and lots of tufts. I can't say enough about tufts. I throw them everywhere I can, as big a variety as I can, because I just love these so much. Look at that. Amazing. Alrighty, now comes the fun part, and that is the resin. This is a 2-part epoxy resin. There's a hardener and then the resin itself. You want to make sure these are absolutely equal in your dimensions or your amounts. You will notice that they're quite opaque right now. That's just because they're full of bubbles, and we'll be taking care of that in a second. But I want the scene to look like it had freshly rained, so we're gonna have little puddles of resin here and there. I don't want the whole thing looking too glossy, then it'll just look plasticky, so I want some nice dry spots in there as well. But yeah, we just take the lighter that gets rid of all our bubbles and cleans it up very nicely. Now, while the resin is curing, we're going to move on to plastering the house. But first, before we do that, I want to stain all the timber, all the wood. And I'm just going to spray it down with a water bottle first. This just allows the wood to really take the stain nice and evenly. Otherwise, it gets all clumpy and gross looking, and we don't want that. And for our plaster, I'm just using good old plaster of Paris that you can find at your hardware store. And I found actually using a pipette to be the best way to get this, the fastest and the best way to get all these little cavities filled in. Okay, so our resin has cured, and I wanted to do something really unique with this, and that's make an actual splash. So the way I decided to do that is to use a blender and use a physics simulation similar to the ways I have done for the castle build. And what this simulation is, very briefly, it's made up of all these little blue particles, as you can see, and overlaid on top of that is a mesh, which is what becomes our actual water. You can see each little particle has its own little globule, and it's this mesh we're going to be 3D printing after the fact. So this is what I ended up with here. I extended the base down just so we have something to grab it by. And we're going to actually make a silicone mold for this thing. We're going to make the mold by painting on this 2-part silicone. There's actually a part A and a part B. You mix together and it cures in about 4 hours. And I came up with this little device here with my turntable. It helps keep the silicone on, stops it from dripping off, and it eventually cures that way. And we ended up with this, our silicone mold. So I'm going to remove the 3D printed splash out of there, add in our resin, and we'll end up, hopefully, fingers crossed, with a beautiful little resin splash. After I'd applied the resin, I worked out any little bubbles that might be trapped inside, and after 24 hours, our resin has cured. And we have our splash. Now it's a little on the opaque side, but we're going to be taking care of that in just a second using more UV resin from the 3D printer. This is what we used for the windows. So I'm going to apply it onto the base here and then apply that onto the actual base, the diorama base, using our UV light. So that's going to glue this thing in place, and then I'm going to apply the resin all over the top, the exterior of the splash itself. That's going to get rid of that opaqueness, make it nice and glossy just like our water, and there we have our splash. Alright, now I'm going to make some trees, and for that I'm always going to defer to my fine leaf foliage from Woodland Scenics. There's just nothing out there that has such a good effect as them. And these are actually sagebrush armatures, or little tree branches that I've clipped out in the country here in good old Saskatchewan, Canada. Plenty of this stuff kicking around, and yeah, it makes for amazing trees. As you can see here, this isn't quite a full tree, sort of a half dead one. It gets the job done. In twilight's hush, where shadows play, a giant spider lurks, awaiting its prey. Its web a tapestry of night's dark hue, a snare for unsuspecting prey anew. I did say our story was not yet over, far from it, and there is another character in this scene. Yes, it is a giant spider, and what you saw me doing there was actually rigging this guy up inside a blender. And rigging is a technical term in the 3D modeling and animation. So it's more for animation, but it allows you to actually pose this guy the way I wanted him to be posed. I 3D scanned the building and was able to adjust all his armatures, his legs and everything to exactly fit that, the building that we are making. Now, I've been using Blender for many years, and I'd say rigging is kind of an advanced thing. So the fact that Hero Forge has those tools built right into the browser is pretty slick, pretty awesome. Now, to really make the diorama pop, we're going to need some LEDs, and I mean a lot of LEDs. I printed off these little lamp posts that I had found online. I ended up tweaking them to make my wires and everything fit properly and to make it a little bit stronger for 3D printing, and they look phenomenal. So I got these flickering LEDs. These are 9 volt. And I actually ended up finding a variable voltage adapter, wall adapter, that you can adjust from 9 volts all the way down to 3. And I think in the end I ended up going with about 3 or 4 volts. It was just way too bright otherwise. But we use a lot of LEDs here, a lot, about 28 of these flickering LEDs. These are 3mm flickering LEDs, and I love them. Now it's time to light up the inside of the house, and I wanted every window to have some lights flickering through on the inside. So I used these paper straws to set the lights to where I needed them from the inside. As you can see here, we have some windows midsection of this straw. So I added some lights on there, glued that guy in place, and I proceeded to do the same throughout using these straws to get the LEDs to the various levels that I needed them. One thing I haven't done really well in the past is cable management. This time I wanted excellent cable management. I've got these 2 plugs. That's it. That's what's going to light up this guy here. This is the adapter that I ended up wiring them to. And we have a successfully lit house, which is going to look freaking amazing. Lastly, I just had to add the port where the house is actually going to be plugging into the base, and that's what I'm doing here, and you'll see in a bit exactly how that works. So this house can be removed whenever I need it to be removed, or attached and plugged into the diorama when needed. Now all that's left is the final paint on the exterior of the building, as well as our miniatures. And I was pretty indecisive about how I was going to do this exterior on the house. Now I was really debating what kind of color to do this in. I wanted to try some sort of color, so I went with yellow on the little tower there, with the idea that if I didn't like it, I could maybe just leave that tower section yellow and then paint the rest the way I wanted to paint it. I did end up attempting to do it a different color. I wasn't happy with that, as you'll see, so I moved on to some green moss here, which is that green slime from Vallejo, and then we moved on to doing up the roof, which my airbrush made very quick work of, and I was very happy with that. And then we moved on to the plaster, and honestly, the off-white, there's just nothing that can beat that, mixed with some good weathering techniques. I'm just really happy with how this looks. You just can't beat it. And finally, it's time to get painting our minis and set up our scene. Now, as far as painting goes, I'm not any kind of master painter. I really do enjoy painting minis, however. But for me, basically all it is a base coat. So you put your base color to where you want it to go. And from there are a few different techniques you can use. You can use washes, which we do here for some shadows. I don't go too crazy on the washes. I did do some highlighting. You can do highlighting, edge highlighting, things like that. But here's our mini, and I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. Now moving on to our female. She's got a cowboy hat. This is D&D, so we can have cowboy hats. And I wanted her to have nice bright orange hair for that to really pop, and I was attempting to do some highlighting and stuff on this guy, or on this mini. But really, washes just go so far. You just can't beat them as far as speed and getting all the little shadows in the places that they need to be in. But anyway, here's our mini, and I'm quite happy with her, despite it not being an amazing masterpiece. I like it. I like them a lot, actually. And we've got our UV light and resin to get those guys into place, and we can really start to see the whole scene start to unfold before our eyes. And there it is, the black paint on the base. You know we're almost there when the black paint comes out. Now it's just gluing in our trees, gluing in the fence and the picnic benches, wheelbarrows, things like this. And finally, we have one last item to add to our scene. guys, and we have finished another amazing project. Big thank you to Hero Forge for sponsoring the video and making it possible to make such a cool and unique and dynamic scene. I'm sure there's a million ways that you can use their tools, the kit bashing tools, to make some cool interactive characters for your campaign, or even take a scene from your campaign, a memorable one, make something like this to commemorate a D&D session. Lots of cool things that you can be using with the kit bashing generator. As promised, I said I'd mention this guy very briefly. This is the Real Terrain Hobbies Builder's Kit. This thing is a massive brick. Not an actual brick. A massive box of tools and supplies, and this kit was put together a few years ago now, and everything inside was purchased at the pricing back then. So you can imagine now this box is worth a lot more than what we're selling it for now. So if you haven't got your hands on one of these guys, highly recommend you grabbing one of these kits. Christmas is on its way, and this is what you actually make. This is a blacksmith that you can use inside. There is a laser cut template to make this guy, along with a whole entire video series masterclass on how to actually make this stuff for yourself. So grab yourself a Real Terrain Hobbies Builders Kit. Go check out Hero Forge. Big thank you to all my patrons and everyone that supported me over the years. They'll get a bit of a deeper description as to where I've been and better update. But yes, thank you very much for all of your support. It's been a while, I know. That's all I'm going to say about it. I want to make more videos, so here's to make more videos. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the next one.